everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Reading Party podcast with Megan and Lexi. This episode continues our season looking at modern retellings of the Iliad and the Odyssey, ancient epics known for both brutal violence and instances of sexual assault. This episode is not suitable for under 18s. We hope you have your favourite beverage and snack ready to go, because we've got our teas and are ready to start spilling the tea on our latest ancient story.
What tea are you drinking? Same.
Yeah, it's going to surprise no one to hear that I'm drinking English breakfast tea, as, every time we talk. How about you?
Well, there was this, cinnamon peppermint thing that I really had to try. So it's some sort of cinnamon peppermint thing.
It sounds delicious. I've never heard of that combination.
I hadn't either, but it's this magical Swedish tea brand, and my friends just had some. It's a loose leaf tea actually, so this is the first one that's not. I usually just go for the bag because it's easy, but my friend has this thing, so you can put the loose leaf in it, and so I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is delicious. So I have some of that, and then my snacks today, some chips.
Oh, I love chips.
Mm-hmm. These are the Swedish answer to our Ruffles with sour cream and cheddar and sour cream. This is sour cream and onion, and it's delicious.
Oh God, I love sour cream and onion chips. They're so good. Actually, one of the things I miss most about living in the UK is some of the snack options. The US has great snacks, don't get me wrong, but I miss the ones that I grew up with. I've got a brownie today because my husband recently took up baking and he's been stress baking, and it's amazing because I have so many cakes and cookies and brownies, and it's just wonderful. Highly recommend living with a baker.
I lived with a stress baker in college and it was good because I don't stress bake. I actually hate baking because I don't have patience. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the patience either. He's so much better at it than I am. But anyway, we should move on from our snack and tea options, as fascinating as that is, because we have this is episode 3 of Troy Fall of a City, and we're covering episodes 5 and 6 of the show.
That's going by so quick, isn't it?
It really is. That's no exaggeration. I'm kind of disappointed, actually, that we're over halfway through now. I'm enjoying this so much. It's such good TV, and I'm so glad you suggested we watch it.
Oh, good. I am very glad I suggested it too. No, I'm kidding. I know they're cramming in so much because these episodes are so long, but I also feel no, they could have stretched it to maybe 2 more and given us 10.
I mean, I absolutely would not have complained about that. Just, 2 more episodes. Why not? There's enough story there. But these 2 episodes are they're kind of quite climactic. I feel like the first 4, there's a bit of a slow lead up to what's happening, what's going on, really, really good at setting the pace. And now we've got some really big plot points coming in. And I feel like they did it very, very well. It didn't feel terribly rushed, but it also wasn't too slow, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, because the first 4 episodes really kind of set the tone for everything, and then there's going to be this big climactic battle, because that at some point the Trojans will try to burn the Greek ships, and you do come into these knowing, okay, well, at some point Patroclus is gonna die, because, well, he usually dies after the whole ship thing. And so what did you think about Achilles' reaction to Patroclus being killed? Because I know you said that you were looking forward to seeing kind of the reaction. So was it pretty much what you were kind of expecting, or was it a little more understated, or?
It wasn't so much more understated. I was expecting a kind of quiet fury. And what you get in this episode is just grief and shock. So it's quiet, and it's it's the level of, I guess, emoting that I was anticipating, but it's grief and sadness over and above the anger that I think I anticipated, and I think you see in some other adaptations. I suspect the fury will come maybe in a subsequent episode, because the death of Patroclus happens in episode 6, so we've still got 2 more episodes to go. But it was very, very well done, because the way they play it out is you have Achilles standing in his tent listening to the duel, and everything else is silent, right? The rest of the battle has stopped, and you've just got everyone in a ring around Hector and Patroclus, and obviously they think Patroclus is Achilles. So you've got the whole of the encampment and all the Trojan soldiers watching this duel.
They're just kind of stunned. Like, there's no reaction other than just like, what is going on?
And you've got Achilles in his tent listening intently to the duel, and then Patroclus cries out in pain, and you just see Achilles run. And by the time he gets to the site of the battle, Patroclus is already dead. And Achilles he yells no. And Hector asks him, do you send another man out in your armor? And Achilles just stares at him and picks up the body of Patroclus and carries him off. And it was very poignant, actually very, very poignant. And then immediately after that, you have the camera cuts to Andromache alone, having just given birth to Hector's son, which for those people watching who know the story, just adds a whole other layer of grief and sadness to the episode and to that scene, because you know that Hector has sealed his fate by killing Patroclus. He's dead now as well. And the child is also not going to survive terribly long after this. I think what was definitely unexpected for me was the confrontation between Achilles and Patroclus before Patroclus takes the armor and goes out onto the battlefield and kind of turns the tide and ultimately is killed by Hector. Like, essentially Achilles says, I don't love you anymore. It's like, it was completely out of the blue for me. So Patroclus tells him, like, you're essentially as bad as Agamemnon. You've taken this too far. You're being an arrogant bastard. At least Agamemnon knows he is. And I'm done now. I want to go home and I can't go home. Please come with me, fight for me. We can get through this together. And Achilles is like, you need to stop before I forget that I once loved you. He doesn't say love because there's a whole thing about how love is weakness. But yeah, it was unexpected.
And then he gives that line about you have one chance because I did have love for you, kind of implying that it was taking it away. I don't know about you, but like, I guess it was a little jarring to see. So they have this conversation in the tent, and then you don't really see him take Achilles' armor, but like the way he comes out of the tent, he kind of is just like standing there for a minute. So it almost looks like it could be Achilles, like, oh yeah, I got ready. But I'm like, if he stole his armor, you wouldn't like get ready in the big tent and then just like walk out and be like, oh, you know. So I thought that was a little interesting that they.
Yeah, you're right. So it's kind of implied that maybe they make up, and well, maybe not make up, but that Patroclus has the armor with Achilles' blessing. Like, maybe this is a scheme that they came up with together, and because Achilles obviously knows, right, that Patroclus is gone because he's standing there listening, and you can tell by the way he's listening that this is like, he's not just listening to a battle, he's listening to a battle that actually has some personal significance for him, I guess, which is a silly way to put it, right? Because it's right outside his tent. It's his army, it's his fight. Of course it's significant, but the way he's standing there, the way he's holding himself, his whole attitude, he knows that it's Patroclus out there fighting. And whatever he said about, I once held affection for you, he's emotionally invested.
Yeah, no, that tracks. I just found it interesting how they did it, because like thinking about the movie, which we also just watched, there's no conversation beforehand. There's nothing. There's just the ships are being attacked. And then the movie just, you hear like a scream and they're like, Achilles. And then you see like someone in Brad Pitt's armor like running. So, you know, to me, I was kind of like, it's just interesting the different ways they were trying to trick us into it. But yeah, no, it was emotional. I mean, I think it fits for this character again, where he has that quiet rage, where it's just like the austere, but also, you know, this man is really vain. He's prideful and he's arrogant. And so when Hector is like, "You sent another man in your armor," like I was kind of expecting him to say something, like not just like I expected the stare, but like for him to just be like, and then like walk away, you know. Yeah, I was kind of like, they're gonna think you're a coward or something. And now we all know like Achilles is no coward. But even to let the idea that he had to have someone do his dirty work, I feel like after building this character up and being so honorable, like he would take that as a slight and be like, no, it's dishonorable to send someone in your armor. So of course, you know, or maybe I was expecting him to be like he stole it from me. If I'd known, I never would have let him come, or just something. So I thought it was interesting to let him believe, and then just like walk away. So I want to kind of go back to episode 5. It was interesting. So yeah, Paris is just kind of like wandering out in the wild. He's not doing anything really, and he's all, "Oh, poor me, I need to stay away from Troy because, you know, her destiny is tied to me, and as long as I'm there, she'll not be okay, so I'm just gonna leave." And I found that really funny, because he basically goes like the whole episode being like, I lost the duel, so they probably returned to Helen, and then you have this like split screen because it pans to like Helen and Troy, and they're like, "We're not giving her back." Like, no. And so she's like, "Will he ever come back to me?" And then it's so funny to just have like the next scene be like, "She's gone back to the Greeks. No, I'm staying away." It's like this very dramatic like split screen, and I'm all for it, but I'm also like, this is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, it was definitely not what I anticipated for the episode of just Paris wandering around in the wilderness and going back to his original family, the family who raised him, and trying super hard to be all like, I can just be a shepherd boy again, and where's that girl that I was kind of engaged to once? And it was a lot. It was really nice. I enjoyed seeing those characters again, and it did give a little bit of kind of closure. You know what happened to his dad. You know what happened to the woman that you see him with at the very beginning, and there's a random baby there, and I wasn't too clear on whether, like, is the baby his?
Well, it's hard to catch, because she says like, "My husband is here," but remember when he's like, "Can I see the child?" or like steps forward, and she was like, "No, he will know it was you," and they didn't explain that. But I took that as, he'll know you were the one who fathered this child. But also I'm taking it from what I remember about Greek mythology, because this definitely is not in the Iliad, but her name is Oenone, and like in some versions of myth, Paris had like married her, but before he was like rediscovered, and so and he had fathered the child. It was clearly his, but then when he like took his destiny and went to Troy, he basically abandons her and is like, "Ciao, Bella, like, I'm out of here." And well, sucks to suck that you're pregnant. Bye. So and I remember that from myth, but also Natalie Haynes actually has a chapter on her, a very short one, in 1,000 Ships. And it covers the exact same kind of thing, which is like, she's kind of pissed that he would leave, and she's like, "Well, where's his honor? He has a kid, but okay, bye." And then she gets like so pissed with him that she was like, "Well, it's kind of like sour grapes, but like extreme, because she was, well, in the myth she talks about like how, you know, if he came back even begging to get back with her, she wouldn't take him back. So they kind of covered that a little in the episode, but not really. But I understand like why that's not a focal point. So I just thought it was kind of a cool nugget for those familiar with Oinoni's story, that like she has this child, and yes, she did have to get married to sort of save her reputation, but like, no, it's clearly Alexander's child. And you're like, oh damn, you know. So like she won't take him back, so he can't just stay with her. Because I think if she'd been like, yes, this is your child, yeah, because it's like if he would have been like, you know, oh, that's my child, I claim him, will you take me back, I'm happy to live with you and raise this child away from Troy. And if she would have said yes, like I think that would have been the end. But because of her rejection of like, no, you left, bye, and I have a husband, that's why he goes back to the shepherd, who unfortunately was killed.
That just felt kind of unnecessary.
Yeah.
That was really tragic.
I know, I was like, what?
I mean, I get that it's needed in terms of the plot, because he can't stay there, clearly, because it wants to show him bringing death and destruction to everyone he loves, so it kind of drives him towards this leap off the cliff thing that we see towards the end, but it was just so sad.
But I'm also kind of like, but how could the Greeks get that far? Because he's like really far from all the Greeks. So I'm kind of like, did the Greeks kill him? Like, I think they wanted to imply that it was them, but I'm also like, but like he wandered so far away that the Greeks wouldn't have been there. So I was kind of just a little confused by the whole thing. But after like daddy dies, or second daddy dies, he kind of just like wanders around and then goes up a cliff, and then you just kind of see Aphrodite like standing there like, my poor Paris, and then he's like, why have you done this to me? And then like launches himself off the cliff, and so you're like, well, he's not gonna die, because then there'd be literally no story. But also like, LOL, he just throws himself off this really tall cliff. Like, where's he going?
Yeah, I was not expecting to see a suicide attempt from Paris. It was interesting. It kind of shows a self-awareness that I don't think we see in other Paris figures, in other adaptations. He knows what he's done. He feels like he is responsible, but also can't change it because of this curse. So for him, I guess the only viable recourse is to try and save everyone by breaking the curse through his own death. And then it kind of wakes up, and it Aphrodite says that because his heart stopped beating, he technically died. Even though he's not still dead, he doesn't stay dead. He died enough that broke the curse, which mentally frees Paris, I think, to go back to Helen and to go back to Troy and to his life without carrying that guilt of being responsible for the death of everyone, and feeling like maybe Troy can actually come out of this and people will be okay.
And then, of course, omitting that she basically just told a bold-faced lie, which I was like, I guess I'm like, I understand, because it has to move the plot, it has to get him back to Troy, but I'm also kind of like, okay, well, that's really going out on a limb, though. Like, for me, it was kind of a bridge too far, because I was kind of like, you could have found a different reason. Like, he suddenly, like, I don't know, Aphrodite could have just whispered, like, your wife is still in Troy and she's waiting for you. You know, and, like, make it more about that romance they're trying to invest so much time and energy in. So to just, you know, have it be something, you know, a little more random, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Because they've already established that, like, he was like, I'll do anything other than never see Helen again. So he was kind of like, screw the prophecy, because if he really cared about the prophecy. So I was like, no, you could have just been like, Helen's alive and waiting for you. She's not with the Greeks. Okay, I'm gonna run back home.
I did wonder if this was their attempt to try and trick the audience watching into thinking maybe this Troy adaptation would have a happy ending, right? Because I don't think there would be many people watching who don't know that this is a tragic story. Everyone knows the Brad Pitt version, right? We all know that Troy falls. But maybe they were trying to say, oh no, we're going to do something different with this adaptation, and actually there will be a happy ending. So that was kind of my only thought. Maybe they're trying to set us up for a happy ending that obviously won't come, because it can't have a happy ending. It's the Iliad. That would be a step too far, I think, even for a modern adaptation.
I wonder if it was like, I mean, maybe for the people who genuinely like didn't know the story necessarily. You know, sometimes I think, okay, well, maybe you try to give them hope to spice up the drama, because it is also for popular audiences who aren't familiar with the material. And so you do kind of want to give them a sense that, like, hey, if you actually like these characters, because we've spent a lot of time making them sympathetic, like, we don't want it to be doom and gloom right away. And so I could see maybe why that was a choice. But also, like, I guess for me, and maybe it's just because I'm a classicist, but when I think of the Iliad and adaptations of Troy, like, it should read like the Titanic. Like, you should go into that movie knowing that the ship is going to sink and nothing you can do is going to stop it. You know, I don't watch the Titanic that often anymore. I watched it a lot in high school. And it's really funny because I have friends who have still never seen the movie. And when asking them, like, why not? Because it's a really good movie, they say that pretty much, well, I know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to sink. And they're kind of like, well, from popular culture, they're like, we already know that, like, one of the main characters, spoiler alert, dies. And then they're like, well, I don't need to see that. That's just depressing. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, you know, I get that logic. If you don't want to see it, then fine. But yeah, so for me, I guess as a classist, I'm kind of like, no, I expect it to be like the Titanic, where I know exactly who dies and who lives. But it's like the journey to it is still entertaining enough. And depending on adaptation, you can make it different enough. But like adding some sort of dimension of they might live, Troy might not be doomed, it just takes me out of it a bit, which is why I didn't like that.
Yeah, I can see that. It was a little bit jarring to have it. Maybe Troy will be saved. This feels super weird. And because it's obviously never in question in the source material, and as someone who's read the Iliad, you're gonna know that Troy is just doomed because the gods say so. Like, there's no curse. Paris didn't do anything he wasn't supposed to do the whole damn time. So that there's really no saving it. So having that possibility felt a little strange.
Because you're like, there's no curse in the source material. There's no curse in any other sort of adaptation. It was always, you're literally pawns at the whim of gods. And to throw a wrench in that and be like, well, it's that, and it could be this. I'm just like, but that's unnecessary. And then it complicates things. And then it almost like takes some of the onus off the gods. To me, it strips some of the gods of their like usefulness.
Yeah, right, because so much of the Iliad is about the capriciousness of the gods and humanity's powerlessness in the face of their whims, really. That having an extra reason for the war and for the fall of Troy, you're like, well, then why are the gods there? Why are they taking sides? And why was there the choice of Paris, like the apple at the beginning? Why did all that happen if he's just cursed? He could just be cursed and there be no competition and be no goddesses trying desperately to influence the direction of the war, because if he's cursed and Troy's gonna fall. I also wanted to know, why is he cursed? Right? That doesn't really seem to be explained terribly well. I feel like if there's a curse, then you didn't honor the gods correctly, or you didn't sacrifice correctly, or there's a reason that this is happening. It's not just they woke up one morning and magically were cursed. They did something wrong. That's not really ever explained, so it didn't feel like a very well-rounded reason.
Yeah, no, they do spend a lot of time just being like, oh, you two, you're cursed. I'm like, okay, but they also had a shit ton of other children, so like, why wasn't another child or several of your children quote unquote cursed then? I mean, you know, they kind of hint throughout the whole series, and they have the whole black blood from the pigeons, And I know they're trying to attribute that to the curse, but I'm also kind of like, yeah, but you know, it's just weird to have. It could have been explained by the gods, by divine intervention. Like, yes, Zeus was pissed, so he's going to make these pigeons rain black blood. But then to be like, it's the curse, and I'm like, yeah, but then you set up the whole thing from the beginning. So I have questions about why this is necessary. But also, just like side note, when Aphrodite was trying to be like, forgive him, the fact that she was like trying to seduce him, and I'm like, but isn't that your daddy?
Yeah, that was super creepy. And I know they're Greek gods. I know this is a thing that happens, and he's Zeus. Seduction and sleeping with inappropriate women is kind of his jam, but it was still very creepy.
No, my you know, the incest thing, yeah. I mean, okay, look, if it's like her and Ares, you're like, okay, whatever, fine. But I guess my problem was the fact that like Zeus is kind of like dadded everyone. Look, if you're kind of cousins, it's still gross, but you're like, okay, these gods are like cousins. It's really gross if it's siblings, but I was like, but it's your daddy. And she's all like getting kissy and stroking him, and you're like, ah. Yeah, I sat there and I was like, I am so uncomfy right now. Can I fast forward this? Luckily, it only lasts like 2 seconds, because then he's just like, no, you know, and then he's like, go away. And she's like, oh, fine, I'm not getting what I want, so I'm going to leave. But it was just, yeah, it was very uncomfortable. Yeah, so I guess, you know, with episode 5, there really isn't much other than Paris is in the wilderness, and it's very table setty.
Yeah, bits of it did feel a lot like filler. It was an interesting episode. I feel like it did help move the plot forward, but the wandering was... I'm glad we didn't have much more of that. Oh, but what did you think of the opening scene where Andromache and Hector bring Cassandra to see their parents? I really enjoyed that. It was kind of like the kids rallying around each other and demanding an explanation for what their parents had done. Because, I mean, their parents knew the whole time what was going on, and that Paris him living would essentially doom the whole of Troy. And they locked Cassandra away and made everyone think she was mad, which is pretty poor parenting, really, if we're going to get into that. I found that it was a really interesting scene. I enjoyed it, and it was nice to see more of Cassandra, because I feel like she's a great character, and the actress who plays her really does a great job.
Yeah, no, I really liked it too. It was kind of like the justice for Cassandra thing, but at the same time, I still had a problem with the scene, because they tie that whole non-belief to the curse, not the gods. And so, like, while I liked this, finally she got justice and stuff, like, but the point of her, really, to me at least, was like, but you don't understand that what she saw was the truth and the future until after it's happened. So, like, you know, if she really was, I mean, the way they set it up with the curse is she was like, yeah, the curse says that, you know, his presence here will be Troy's doom. But they attributed that to the curse, not the gods, just like giving her this vision. So I was I'm a little disappointed, because I'm kind of like, you would never have this moment if her power was tied more to the god's curse than this other curse. So I don't know. I like it for, I guess, just the message it sends, which is like, don't just shut people away because you don't like what they're saying. But like, at the same time, it does a disservice, I guess, to the original source material, because it's not like they would only know that she was right after Troy was burned to the ground, or was burning to the ground. So I'm kind of like, I definitely like it for what they're doing in this, and I think it's very fitting for this series. I definitely don't think it would be fitting in any other series. Just, you know, it's random. But yeah, so we do get that nice scene where we kind of rehabilitate her. They interestingly make the choice to move Helen to the widow's quarters. They don't let her like keep her big chamber. And it's interesting because they know he's not dead. I mean, you even have Hector being like, Alexander knows the wilderness. He knows the woods. He'll be okay. And after the war, And he's just like, no, I know. He just, he grew up there, so he obviously will be okay. And I found it very funny and interesting that he was like, optimistically like, well, when this war is over, we will let you and him have a great future away from here.
Yeah, he's like, not only will we win this war, but when we do, you and Paris can just go and live and be happy just somewhere else. We'll protect the city. You guys can go. You'll be fine. It's all right. It's fine. And then while he's saying all of this, you've got Andromache sitting next to him, kind of giving Helen the side eye, and then she is the one explaining, oh well, he'll be fine, sure, but we're gonna put you in the widow's quarters for a little bit, just keep you out of the way, out of the public gaze. It's for your own safety.
She's barely veiling her glee, like she's like trying not to be like wee, and you're like, oh damn.
And then we get that little bit of a confrontation between Andromache and Helen. Right when Helen is moving to the widow's quarters, she passes Andromache in the hallway and is like, now you get like what you wanted or something. And Andromache says, I'm doing this for you. And Helen says, like, why do you hate me? I'm the reason that you're pregnant, right? Because she gave her that potion. And Andromache gets really, really defensive and essentially says, well, fuck you. Like, I'm not pregnant because of you. I don't thank you for this baby. I thank the gods for this baby.
Yeah, I was like, but aren't you? No. Oh, we're doing this? Okay. But she finally also confronts Telamon, who is the Greek spy. I was like, but how would she like? She's only seen him from the shadows when he's kind of like awkwardly looking up at her, like, what is she doing? And then she like walks into his house, and you're like, but it's like a random hut in the lower town.
I did wonder how on earth she found him. She doesn't really know what he looks like. As far as we're aware, she's not like wandering around the lower town on a regular basis. He's hiding from everybody. How on earth did she find him?
Did the gods lead her here? Unclear. Yeah, I'm like, just blame everything on the gods. It was the gods. We can't explain it. It was the gods. But yeah, so she finds him, and it's really funny because he's just like, I can get you out. I'm here to help you. I'm here to blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, no, leave. I don't need help. I'm fine. And he's like, how funny. I'm staying, and you may need me, whether you want to think of it or not. And then she's like, okay, whatever. And then she ends up actually like needing his help, which I thought was hilarious. So I'm just like, oh honey.
At the very least, it was naive of her to think that she wouldn't possibly need help at some point. Surely. She's a foreign woman that is being fought over in a war where the city she's living in is getting its arse handed to it. Even if Pandarus wasn't sneaking around, at some point someone would say, why is this woman still here? She's going to need help. And I did actually feel really bad for Pandarus. He didn't need to die like that, or, at all. He's been doing his best, really, to aid the king and the city the whole way through this. Obviously, you're not supposed to root for him, and I'm not rooting for him because he's getting very close to finding out that Helen has been in contact with Achilles and that there's this Trojan skulking around. So obviously he's a threat to her, right? And they have to deal with him to be, mildly threatening about it. But I did feel bad for him. He's doing his job. I don't feel like he's a bad person.
Yeah, he's kind of just this guardian, mentor person, advisor to the king who just kind of, but honestly, he acts like a grunt. He just does the dirty work, He's like, okay.
It actually took me a while to work out that he's like nobility or somehow connected to the royal family.
I know, I did too. I was like, oh, you're not just like some servant. Okay.
And then I thought Helen's response to Pandarus being killed was really interesting. What did she expect to happen when she said that he needed to be taken care of?
And then I love it because it's like he's dead, and then she's just like, what? He's dead? No, he needs to be alive. I told you to send him away. And he's just like, I love how he kind of half-heartedly attempts to be like, well, I did offer him, but he refused, you know. And she's like, uh-huh. But I want to get to the more action-packed episode, which was episode 6, where it's like it turns out that the Trojans have spies also, and they find out that Achilles is not fighting, and they don't know why, but they're like, okay, we got to take advantage. And so I love how they kind of just come out and then they announce to the Greeks, you need to be gone by morning, and we're going to, you know, bring our horses, and sucks to suck, but yeah, we're gonna ride and kill you all. Bye. So, you know, they kind of do that, and they're like, oh no, what do we do? What do we do? And then when they do ride into the camp, it's this hilarious moment where the Myrmidons see them riding in, and they see the Myrmidons, so they're just like staring. And then you have this great line from like Hector where he's just like, for God's sakes, don't kill them, because they will not attack us unless Achilles says so. And he's not fighting because he's pouting, so no, he's not gonna do anything. And so I'm like, if you saw someone walking into your camp to burn your food that you also have to eat, I was like, you know, I don't think I'd just stand there and be like, okay, cool. So you have this great epic battle on the beach, and then that's where Patroclus unfortunately dies. And let's talk about the duel, the big duel we've been waiting to talk about, when Hector is like, all right, man, I done fucked up, and this is when I die.
So my question about that sequence is less about the duel and more about what was Andromache doing, giving birth by herself
in a barn.
Shouldn't she have been with other people?
No, because she was. No, it's because she was like watching from the balcony, you know, with Helen when they're watching the ships burning in the nighttime, and she was just like, oh yeah, it's loud out there, but it's quiet in here. And then Helen's just like, I have no taste for battle, and like walks away. And then she's like, okay. So I think it was just her like coming back down from the wall and then trying to go back up to the palace. And because you see her like walking in some random stables, and then you just see her like kind of collapse on the ground, holding her stomach, like, oh no, something's wrong.
So something that always bugs me about pregnancy and birth scenes in movies and TV is how fast they go. Right, first labors take, on average, I don't know how long they take on average, but they can run long. I have friends whose first labors were like 2 days plus. She has that baby super, super fast. There's no way she's been able to have an entire ass baby, her first entire ass baby, without someone come looking for her, notice that she's not back in her rooms. I don't know. She's a pregnant royal lady. They don't just let them wander off wherever they feel like it. It's just, yeah. It's probably me being too, demanding too much realism from a fantasy story, but it's unrealistic and it's annoying.
I mean, although they weren't clear on timelines, because they were out like in the middle of the night, and then they kind of show that like she's fine when it's light out. So I'm kind of like, but we don't know how many hours they were out fighting. So it's like if they left it like, you know.
Right, and if she'd been in labor when they left in the morning and then, because like in labor you can often like get up and walk around, and that's totally fine. And then it had progressed to where she just did actually give birth in the stables. That would be more realistic, and for me, as someone who has been through birth and labor, it would be much more believable. You don't just have a couple of contractions and then push a baby out. Contractions go on for several hours before you get to the pushing the baby out stage. So for her to just be seemingly fine and not feeling anything at all, and then suddenly doubled over, and even if it is a couple of hours later, it's only a couple of hours later, and there's a baby. It was irritating and inaccurate.
I think it was, to me, it plays as lazy writing, because they have her suddenly, you know, just be, and then...
Actually, because of her reaction, I did think briefly that maybe she was miscarrying. I thought they were doing something different with the story.
Right, no, because usually the reaction is like you kind of go, oh no, and you grab your stomach, and I don't know. I guess when contractions come, the overwhelming feeling would be that you don't act like you're miscarrying if you're suddenly going into labor, but that's just me. But yeah, no, it was quite interesting how they had it done. But yeah, and then they have the men come back, and she just kind of walks up to her husband. He gets off his horse, and Hector sees the baby, and he's just like, oh, okay. I do like how they show that he got his name, Styanax, because like we know that was the child's name, but they don't really tell his backstory. So in this series, they have Hector talking to a young boy soldier who is dying, and he was admiring his courage and his bravery to lay down his life for Troy. And he just sort of says, okay, son, what's your name? And he's like, Styanax, that's my name, and then dies dramatically. And then you're like, oh no. So I thought that was kind of cool to give the naming of his son backstory. But of course, this happens at the worst timing possible, because it's like she just has the baby, they name it, and then the very next day, apparently in this timeline, and then he's like, okay, time to fight Achilles.
It was really interesting for me watching this so soon after watching the movie Troy, because the relationship between Andromache and Hector is very different. I feel like this Hector and Andromache are much more like partners, a partnership of equals. I didn't get that from Eric Bana, and I don't know who played Andromache in the movie. Very affectionate though.
This Hector is equally as loving toward his wife, but it's interesting how the moment before he goes out, it's quite different than how Eric Bana played it. And I found it, I don't know if one's better or worse, but I just found it very interesting how it's like in the movie you have Eric Bana, being like, remember what I told you about the passageway, and then he kind of just dramatically, kisses his son and then like leaves. And in this one, he gets a little more dialogue. I guess also because it's a series, so you have more time to set up their relationship. And with the movie, it was so rushed, so you don't really spend any time on Hector and Andromache. But for this one, he's just like, what did he say? Like I would choose a short life as...
I would choose a short life as your husband over a long one alone.
Yeah, so he like says that, and he like kisses her and then like leaves, and so it's a bit... I don't know. To me, it was a bit more emotional because I don't know. It bugs me in the movie how like the last thing you say to your wife is just like, "Remember the passageway I showed you?" I'm like, that's not romantic. The kind of man he is, I'm like, it'd be a little more romantic than that, but okay. But yeah. So then he goes out, and then what stood out to you the differences between the duels? Because in some respects, I really actually prefer the duel in the movie because I think, well, one, I think it lasts longer, but it is more highly stylized, and like they like put a lot of time and effort into making it look epic and pretty. And this one was not. This one is like gritty.
Yeah, this one felt an awful lot more brutal. Just there's nothing like flashy. It doesn't feel terribly choreographed. It's just Achilles going in for the kill. And you see really why he is this famed warrior. You see how absolutely nothing else can touch him. And he just is, he butchers Hector. My God, it's absolutely like, it's a war crime just in and of itself. Interestingly, I did feel there was less emotion from Achilles in this duel as opposed to the movie.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I think, one thing that I appreciated about the movie version, which is like, yes, he's so pissed, but all the anger is definitely directed toward Hector, because he says that, Brad Pitt says this great, it's not great, but he says this line where he's like, you won't have eyes tonight, you won't have ears or tongue, you'll wander the underworld deaf, blind, and dumb, and all the world will know, this is Hector, the dude who thought he killed Achilles. So you're like, okay, well, that's graphic, but, that's very in line with, you want to insult the person that you're so angry about. And so that was very much focused on him. But the other thing was, it's interesting because it's like the movie version, to me, it serves to highlight a lot of Achilles' sort of like invincibility skills, because he's very like, it really highlights that for him, combat is an art form, because you have all the fancy moves and the fact that he just kind of knows where to go, what to do. You can hardly put a scratch on him. And this one, it's not really that. It's just like he does. Yeah, he does get bloody. I don't know. I really like the cinematography, because you hear every, clang of the sword and the shield and the this, that, and the other thing. And I also just kind of noticed, because I noticed these things, that the movie, it starts with them having the helmets and the shields and the full everything. And then, they toss the helmets at least, but then they have their shields. This one, it's like they don't, strangely, they have no helmets, which you would never really go into battle.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice. I was wondering if for Achilles it was he doesn't think enough of Hector to go out there in full armor. Like, I don't need this. There's no way you're going to land a hit on me.
Yeah, and you see you have this great shot of his face where he's kind of like, that was an unbelievable throw. And I think that's where you realize, like, oh shit, yeah, I'm gonna die. So yeah, no, it was really interesting to see the short, brutal combat that was gritty and intense, but mesmerizing, because I think I had to replay the duel twice, because I was like, wait, whoa. And yeah, I don't know, it was very interesting, just the manner in which they chose for him to meet his doom. In the movie you have the spear going into his shoulder, and then he kind of just is like, oh, okay. And then he goes to, and then Hector goes to his knees on his own, and then Achilles just kind of kills him with a very flourishy sort of stab, This one is very much, you do have the spear going in, but then he gets his like hands, his fingers cut off, and then that's when he's like, okay, I've lost.
The thing that really got me, I mean, the whole thing, like, brutal. Absolutely brutal, but the thing that really got me was Helen reaching back. So all of the family are up on the parapets watching the duel, and Andromache's there with Astyanax just crying, and Helen reaches behind her and like grabs Andromache's hand to just try and provide some comfort, and it just that broke me. Even though they're not friends, they don't like each other, they've been at odds for almost the entire series. Just at that moment, they're all in it together.
Yeah, just to show the solidarity. It's it was very touching, and yeah, in both adaptations, they have pretty much the entire royal family looking from the walls. Although this one actually had Hecuba there, just saying. And also this one had a more graphic, because there were at least two like just sort of random killings as well, because Achilles brought with him like 3 people. 2 I guess were soldiers, and 1 was an Amazon, sort of the second in command to Penthesilea. And like, yeah, he's mad, he's screaming Hector, but I found it a bit, I mean, I know it was to anger them, but also it was quite excessive for me, at least. I'm kind of like, you already know he's coming, and they anticipated he would come, so there was no question that they were going to fight. But to bring slaves, and then, yeah, just, because, like, they did nothing other than he put them to their knees, and then, like, slits 2 of their throats, and you see them, like, being slit, and then you see all the blood, and you're like, yeah, okay, that doesn't feel great, does it? And this one was even more graphic in terms of, dragging off Hector's body as well. The other one, Brad Pitt like ties his feet together and then drags the corpse. This one, they had like a fish hook, and he put the hook through his.
I'm not normally squeamish, but this whole sequence was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, luckily they don't show you when it goes in. You sort of see Hector's face in pain, like ow. But they do have this one shot of just the feet with the hook being dragged, and so that is a shot kind of at the end of the episode before you see the corpse being dragged behind the chariot. And it was an interesting idea to end the episode on that shot of the chariot going away with the body being dragged. I guess I was kind of expecting to see maybe him return to his camp, his tent or something, before they stopped it. But I wasn't actually upset with the way they ended it. What about you?
No, I feel like they stopped at the perfect point. Like, you can't. How do you follow that? I don't know. It was entirely appropriate to end the episode right when they did. Absolutely good call. I am interested to see next episode what happens with Agamemnon, because he is getting more unstable, if that's possible. He wasn't terribly stable to begin with, but it's like a descent into insanity over there, I think.
Yeah. It's funny because everything he does is still like sort of wrapped up in the I'm just still so depressed about my daughter thing. And you're kind of just seeing like a multiplication of the madness. But I don't know. Yeah, he's definitely like getting more unredeemable by the moment. I don't know, the dynamics of everyone, I feel like they're changing quite rapidly now. And now that Hector is dead, it's kind of like we're on the home stretch, because that, okay, somehow they're going to do the big Priam sneaks away and somehow has to beg with a kid. Like, and I guess that's, I'll say for me, the thing I'm looking forward to seeing next is that interaction between Priam and Achilles, because this Priam and this Achilles is very different from the movie one. I mean, sort of from the movie version, you have, Peter O'Toole being very, I loved my son and I just want him and this, that, and the other thing. And, like, I don't know, like they did a good job for this one too. But I don't know. I'm
interested to see that scene as well. It's a really poignant scene in so many of the adaptations that we've gone through, that we will go through. And because this Achilles is so, I feel like, different to some of the others, definitely different to Wrath Goddess and obviously different to Brad Pitt, I'm very interested to see how he plays it, and how he kind of interacts with Priam, and whether it's I have to beg to get my son back, or if it's I will give you your son with honor and respect because you're a great king and he was a great warrior kind of thing. So that's going to be an interesting scene, definitely.
Well, and then you have Penthesilea, who's like so pissed that her like second in command is gone. So that she's going to be out for revenge. So I guess still through the first, how many episodes, I'm still like, I'm looking for that climactic duel between Penthesilea and Achilles. But yeah, no, there's that to look forward to. And well, in the last two, we are going to get the Trojan horse, and so we can be excited about that.
And I want to see what happens with Briseis as well, because she's such a cool character in this adaptation. I really want to see, like, what do they do with her?
Oh, there's so much to look forward to. Are you sad it's ending? I'm sad it's ending.
Oh my gosh, so sad. It's been gut-wrenching and emotional, and it's not light. I wouldn't say it's fun, but it's very enjoyable TV. It's so good.
Because I'm just like, no, like, I want more. So they really should. They have to do the Odyssey.
The Odyssey with this Odysseus, with this director, this style of cinematography. Oh, I would watch the hell out of that.
Yeah, no, it's tastefully done, and it's one of the only ones where I think that it's really tastefully done. So I would watch what these creators put out next. And after that, I wouldn't mind if they did an Aeneid adaptation, because there aren't a lot of good ones, if any. I don't know. I've not looked for them. I have not looked for Aeneid adaptations also because I hate Aeneas. I think he's annoying and whiny and like justice for Dido and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't, but if they made an adaptation, I would watch it.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any adaptations of the Aeneid. And again, if these people did one, I would watch it and it would be glorious.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I guess I think we've talked about almost everything. I mean, I guess we didn't really cover a lot of the plot around Helen, sort of what happens moving that forward. But I feel like in the next few episodes we're gonna get more of a yeah. So from what I remember, which is not a lot, but from my bad memory of watching this like three years ago, I think we do have a more climactic sort of something with that. So,
yeah, I think it's impossible to cover everything in an hour from 2 episodes, but I think we got the main highlights, and I'm really enjoying myself. I'm very excited to see what they do with the last 2 episodes and with all the plot points that we know are going to happen. And I hope the audience is enjoying listening to our thoughts. I hope that you're managing to maybe not watch along, but at least watch some of them, because I know we've said it, but this is such a good show. You should watch it, you should enjoy it, and then come back and join us next time for the final 2 episodes.
Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review, and you can also follow us on social media at The Reading Party Podcast. If you'd like to leave us a book or movie suggestion, then email us at thereadingpartypod@gmail.com. See you next week.